The cloud is not in the sky. It lies at the bottom of the ocean in pitch darkness 12,000 feet down. 99% of global data traffic flows through these cables. Financial trades, emails, military communications, everything. And almost none of it is defended. October 7th, 2023, the Baltic Connector gas pipeline between Finland and Estonia suddenly shut down. The same day, the Sea Lion fiber optic cable was severed. 2 critical infrastructure systems simultaneously damaged on the Baltic seabed. Finnish investigators found a 4-kilometer anchor drag trail on the ocean floor. The trail led directly to a Chinese-flagged cargo vessel, the New Polar Bear. The ship had transited the area with its anchor deployed for no apparent navigational reason. Finland's National Bureau of Investigation called it deliberate. China denied any involvement. The cable stayed broken for 4 months. This was not the first time. January 2008, 2 major cables in the Mediterranean Sea were cut within 24 hours. Flag Telecom's cable near Alexandria, Egypt. SeaMeWe 4 cable in the same region. Internet connectivity to India, Pakistan, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia dropped by 70%. Financial markets froze, unable to execute trades. Oil shipment coordination systems went offline. The official explanation was ship anchors dragging across the seabed. But maritime traffic data showed no vessels in those positions at the time of the cuts. November 2008, another cable cut. December 2008, another. 4 major cable failures in less than a year, all in strategic waterways. No one was ever held accountable. Here is what most people do not understand about the internet. It is not beamed through space by satellites. Satellites handle less than 1% of global data traffic. The rest travels through 1.4 million kilometers of submarine fiber optic cables. These cables are thinner than a garden hose. They carry 600 terabits of data per second. One cable alone can handle 200 million simultaneous phone calls. There are approximately 530 active submarine cables in operation today. They connect every continent except Antarctica, and they are astonishingly vulnerable. During World War I, Britain cut Germany's transatlantic cables on the first day of the conflict. August 5th, 1914, the British cable ship Telconia severed 5 German cables in the English Channel. Germany was instantly isolated from direct communication with the United States, South America, and Asia. Every German diplomatic message had to be routed through neutral countries or transmitted by radio, which the British intercepted. This is how Britain decoded the Zimmermann telegram in 1917, a German message offering Mexico an alliance against the United States. The message was intercepted because Germany had no secure cable route. American public opinion turned, the U.S. entered the war, and Germany lost. Cable cutting changed the outcome of World War I. The same vulnerability exists today, but the weapon has evolved. Modern cable warfare is not conducted by naval destroyers. It is conducted by fishing trawlers, survey ships, and commercial vessels that can claim accidents. In March 2013, 3 divers were arrested off the coast of Alexandria, Egypt. They were attempting to cut the SeaMeWe 4 cable. Again, the same cable damaged in 2008. Egyptian authorities described it as sabotage. The divers were never publicly identified. The cable was repaired. No international investigation followed. This is what military strategists call gray zone warfare. Actions that cause damage but fall below the threshold of armed conflict. You cannot invoke Article 5 of NATO over a fishing boat dragging an anchor, but you can cripple a nation's economy. Consider the economic impact. When the 2008 Mediterranean cables were cut, India's stock market lost the ability to execute international trades. Banking systems could not clear transactions. Call centers handling Western customer service went offline. Estimated cost, $60 million per day in lost GDP for a single cable. Now imagine multiple cables cut simultaneously in a coordinated attack. The global financial system depends on microsecond timing for high-frequency trading. That timing comes from data synchronized through submarine cables. Severing those cables does not just slow the internet, it freezes markets. In 2022, the Nord Stream gas pipelines were sabotaged in the Baltic Sea. 4 explosions detected by seismographs across Europe. The pipelines were destroyed in international waters. Investigations by Sweden, Denmark, and Germany found evidence of deliberate detonations. No one has claimed responsibility. No one has been charged. The method was simple. Explosives placed on the seabed, detonated remotely. If pipelines can be destroyed this way, so can cables. The difference is, you do not need explosives for cables. You just need a heavy anchor and a slow-moving ship. Here's the strategic calculation. There are only 60 cable repair ships in the world. These ships carry specialized equipment, remotely operated vehicles, fiber splicing machines, kilometers of replacement cable. A typical repair takes 4 to 6 weeks. If multiple cables are cut simultaneously, the repair queue extends for months. During the 2008 Mediterranean incidents, repair ships were delayed because they were already committed to other jobs. Some cables stayed broken for 82 days. This creates a targeting opportunity. Sink the repair ships, and the cables stay broken indefinitely. In 2023, British Royal Navy officials warned that Russian submarines were mapping the locations of critical Atlantic cables. These are not espionage operations. These are prepositioning operations, identifying where to cut when conflict begins. The United Kingdom is particularly vulnerable. 14 major cables land on British shores. 97% of UK internet traffic flows through them. If those cables were severed, Britain would lose connectivity to global financial markets. The London Stock Exchange would be unable to execute trades with New York or Tokyo. The UK's GDP is 68% services, most of it digitally dependent. Cable cuts would not just be inconvenient. They would be economically catastrophic. The United States faces similar exposure. 29 cables connect the US to Europe. 18 connect to Asia. Losing just 5 key cables would route 60% of transatlantic traffic through the remaining infrastructure. Congestion would slow data speeds by 80%. Financial institutions require high-speed, low-latency connections to function. Algorithmic trading systems execute thousands of transactions per second. Even a 200 millisecond delay can cost firms millions. Cable damage does not need to be permanent to inflict economic pain. It just needs to last long enough. Now consider who controls the repair ships. Most cable repair vessels are owned by private companies. They operate under commercial contracts, not military command. In a conflict scenario, there is no guarantee these ships will prioritize military or government cables over commercial clients. The U.S. Navy operates 0 dedicated cable repair ships. NATO operates 0. If cables are cut during wartime, repair depends on commercial vessels that may refuse to enter conflict zones. Insurance companies already exclude cable damage in war risk policies. This means repair ships will not deploy unless governments indemnify them against losses. That negotiation takes time, and time is exactly what an adversary needs. The Cold War offers a historical parallel. In the 1970s, the Soviet Union laid communication cables across the Sea of Okhotsk. These cables connected Soviet nuclear submarine bases to command centers in Moscow. The United States wanted to tap those cables. In 1971, the USS Halibut, a specially modified submarine, located the cable using deep-sea sonar. Divers placed a recording device directly on the cable. The device did not cut the cable. It intercepted signals passing through it. Operation Ivy Bells ran for 10 years. The Soviets never detected it. The operation only ended when a U.S. intelligence analyst sold the details to the KGB. This demonstrates 2 realities. First, submarine cables can be accessed without being cut. Second, the technology to do so existed 50 years ago. It is far more sophisticated now. China has been building a fleet of specialized survey ships. These vessels are equipped with remotely operated vehicles capable of operating at depths exceeding 6,000 meters. Officially, they are conducting oceanographic research, but Western intelligence agencies believe they are mapping cable routes. In 2021, a Chinese survey vessel was detected loitering near cables connecting Guam to the U.S. mainland. Guam is the central hub for U.S. military communications in the Indo-Pacific. 15 cables land there. If those cables were cut, U.S. forces in Japan, South Korea, and Australia would lose high-bandwidth data links. Communication would revert to satellite, which is slower, more latent, and easier to jam. The strategic implication is clear. Cable warfare is not about destroying the internet. It is about degrading an adversary's ability to coordinate military and economic responses. You do not need to sink a carrier if you can isolate it from command. You do not need to invade a country if you can crash its financial system. This is why Google, Meta, and Microsoft are now building their own private cables. These companies operate more submarine cable infrastructure than most governments. Google alone has invested in 20 cables, including the Do Not cable connecting the US to France. The Do Not cable has 12 fiber pairs and a capacity of 250 terabits per second. It was built to bypass congested public routes, but it also represents something more significant: private infrastructure that does not rely on government protection. These cables include tamper detection systems, sensors that alert operators if the cable is disturbed, acoustic monitoring devices that listen for nearby vessels. Some cables now embed fiber optic sensors every 50 meters along their length. If the cable is bent, strained, or cut, the exact location is reported in real time. This is a defensive response to an offensive threat. But detection does not prevent damage. It only accelerates the response. The European Union has recognized the vulnerability. In 2024, the EU published the Recommendation on a Coordinated Approach to strengthen the resilience of critical undersea infrastructure. The document calls for increased monitoring, naval patrols, and coordination with NATO. But recommendations are not capabilities. The Baltic Sea alone has 50 active cables. Patrolling all of them requires resources most European navies do not have. Estonia operates 4 patrol vessels. Finland operates 8. Neither has deep-sea surveillance capabilities. Detecting a cable cut requires specialized sonar and submersibles. Most nations do not possess these assets. This creates a paradox. The infrastructure is critical, but defending it is prohibitively expensive. So nations accept the risk until the risk materializes. Yemen's Houthi movement demonstrated this in 2024. Houthi forces attacked ships in the Red Sea as part of their campaign against Israel. Several attacks occurred near cables crossing the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. The strait is 18 miles wide at its narrowest point. 17 cables pass through it, connecting Europe to Asia. If those cables were cut, internet traffic would reroute through alternative paths. Those paths run through the Suez Canal region, which is also within Houthi range, or around the Cape of Good Hope, adding 15,000 kilometers to the route. Latency would increase by 200 milliseconds. Bandwidth would drop by 30%. Global data traffic would experience the digital equivalent of a traffic jam. The Houthis have not yet targeted cables directly, but the capability exists, and the economic impact would be significant. The Red Sea carries 12% of global trade. It also carries 80% of Europe-Asia data traffic. Disrupting both simultaneously would stress global supply chains and digital infrastructure at the same time. This is the nightmare scenario for interconnected economies. Physical and digital choke points overlapping. Taiwan represents the most concentrated cable vulnerability in the world. 14 cables land on the island. These cables connect Taiwan to Japan, South Korea, the United States, and Southeast Asia. Taiwan's semiconductor industry depends on these cables for design collaboration, equipment monitoring, and shipment coordination. TSMC alone produces 90% of the world's advanced chips. If Taiwan's cables were cut, chip production would not immediately stop, but coordination with global clients would collapse. Design files could not be transmitted. Shipment schedules could not be updated. Quality control data could not be analyzed in real time. Within weeks, the global electronic supply chain would experience shortages. This makes Taiwan's cables a strategic target, not to invade the island, but to isolate it. In 2006, an earthquake off the coast of Taiwan damaged 8 cables. Internet speeds in Asia dropped by 60%. Repair ships took 6 weeks to restore service. The economic cost was estimated at $1.5 billion. That was an accident. A deliberate attack would be far worse, because the attacker would target repair ships. And without repairs, the cables stay broken. This brings us to the concept of the splinter net, the idea that the global internet is fragmenting into separate networks, not just by censorship or regulation, but physically. China is building its own cable infrastructure that bypasses Western routes. The Peace Cable, completed in 2021, connects Asia to Europe through Pakistan and East Africa. It avoids the Suez Canal entirely. Russia has proposed Arctic cables that would connect Europe to Asia across the northern route. These cables would be under Russian control. The West is responding by building redundant routes. But redundancy is expensive. A single transoceanic cable costs $300 million to build. Protecting it costs even more. The U.S. Navy has begun assigning submarines to monitor critical cables. These missions are classified, but leaked documents suggest the submarines are equipped with acoustic sensors and ROVs, capable of detecting tampering. Britain's Royal Navy is doing the same, but submarines cannot be everywhere, and cables span hundreds of thousands of kilometers. The math does not work. There are too many cables, too few defenders, which means the advantage lies with the attacker, especially when the attacker can claim plausible deniability. A fishing trawler drags an anchor, an accident, they say. The cable is cut. By the time investigators arrive, the vessel is gone. No evidence, no accountability. This is how modern infrastructure warfare operates. In shadows, in gray zones, in deniable acts. And the consequences are real. When cables are cut, economies slow. When repairs are delayed, markets freeze. When redundancy fails, nations are isolated. This is not a distant threat. It is happening now. The Baltic Sea cables in 2023, the Mediterranean cables in 2008, the Nord Stream pipelines in 2022. Each incident a test, each test revealing vulnerabilities, and each vulnerability a target for the next crisis. The cloud is not in the sky. It is at the bottom of the ocean, undefended and fragile. And the nations that control the seabed will control the digital age. The question is not whether cable warfare will escalate. The question is whether we will recognize it when it does, because unlike missiles and tanks, severed cables do not make headlines. They just quietly strangle economies until the lights go out, and by then it is too late.